B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Wednesday, May 9th, 2018. Bloody Gina began her testimony seeking Senate confirmation before the Intelligence Committee on Capitol Hill today. And we've got detailed coverage for you. Now, before I forget, I've been meaning to tell you that I'm going to take some time off starting tomorrow. I'll be gone for about a week, returning on Wednesday, May 16th. And as usual, I don't detail my travel plans in advance, but I'll share them with you when I return. Gina Haspel is a fatally flawed candidate to run the Central Intelligence Agency. And I ruined my breakfast this morning by turning on the confirmation hearings. Now, I've got more to catch up on. I didn't see some of the initial questioning, and I didn't see Senator Feinstein's quizzing of Gina Haspel. But what I did see showed her as a woman who claims to have a moral compass, but it must have been in the shop. Or maybe she acquired it after she ran the black site in Thailand and supervised the torture of one or more people who were in our custody. And what I heard were evasions, euphemisms, legalisms, coded talk of amorality, ethical relativity, equivocation, and the elements that are kind of out of the picture frame are the failures of Barack Obama to hold a single person accountable for the torture regime of the Bush era and his obscene prosecution of John Kiriakou, who had been cleared by the Bush people, and then Obama engineered his trip to prison with a little help from St. James Comey. And a lot of people have amnesia about that. And they look at this and they see these Democrats posturing, asking some tough questions of Gina Haspel. But the Democrats didn't stop the torture when they knew it was going on. The Democrats have not really taken this issue on, and they caved when the singular achievement of Senator Feinstein to compile the 6,500-page report on the CIA's involvement in torture, it was blocked by a bipartisan group of senators with backing from the Obama White House. So we didn't even get the truth out under Obama. And now we are paying a hefty price for it. And Gina Haspel used confrontation. She offered some one-word answers. She often just ducked questions. And when she did respond to them, she parsed her words very carefully. And at times, she said that, torture is wrong and torture doesn't work. And then she equivocated by saying, we got valuable intelligence from the people we tortured, and it's not knowable if that is the reason. And this is unacceptable to me. I believe it's unacceptable to many Americans. Now, Haspel in her opening statement said, we're not getting back into that business. I would not restart under any circumstances an interrogation program at CIA. My moral compass is strong, she said, in response to a question from Senator Mark Warner asking her to define her moral code. I would not allow CIA to undertake activity that is immoral, even if it is technically legal. I would absolutely not permit it. I believe CIA must undertake activities that are consistent with American values. Now, they all say that. But she flatly refused to criticize or judge her actions and the actions of her brave men and women at the CIA. And get this, we're not even permitted to know even an outline of her resume, of what she did before she took control of the counterterrorism desk in 2002. That's all secret. The senators know. They'll be able to discuss it in the secret session that's underway right now. I'm speaking to you on Wednesday afternoon. But we will not be permitted to know even fundamental facts about what kind of work Gina Haspel did, what countries she was deployed to undercover. Nope. This is where we are infantilized by our elected leaders. And then when Senator Harris of California, who is a tough questioner, asked her about, whether torture works, she said, "We got valuable information from debriefing of al-Qaeda detainees. I don't think it's knowable whether interrogation techniques played a role in that. I believe it is knowable." And she is simply avoiding facing the reality. And on her role in writing the order that led to the destruction of 92 videotapes, she did say that she was not seen on those videotapes. But we have to take her word for it because she wrote the memo that her boss signed off on that led to their destruction. And she was just following orders, like, many of the Germans said at Nuremberg. And so what we saw was a lot of phony patriotism, jingoistic nationalism, trying to make the CIA a centerpiece of Americana, when it is a scourge, a blight, a disease, a virus on what's left of the American experiment. Now, one of the areas of questioning was about the fact that she has supervised the selection of what could be told about her history. And she says, well, she just applied the same rules that have been applied to everybody else, and that is we cannot disclose this. That made some senators uncomfortable. Angus King of Maine, the independent, pushed Haspel to acknowledge that she was the person blocking the declassification of materials related to her career. And she could change that. So could the president. But they don't want to. And so they use a bureaucratic barrier. Now, when some Democrats said they saw Haspel using legalese about her role in drafting that cable ordering the destruction of the videotapes, responding to Senator Heinrich of New Mexico, a Democrat, Haspel said, well, that was 17 years ago. When you're out in the trenches and Washington says, this is what we need you to do, this is legal, the Attorney General has deemed it so. In all of my assignments, I have conducted myself honorably and in accordance with U.S. law. So this is a bullshit session. And this, of course, is for public consumption. There may be more detailed grilling and more confrontational questions asked in the secret session. But, of course, we'll never know about that. Now, when it comes to her moral compass, it's selectively applied, mostly about the present and the future. And employing Obama's bad phrase, she's looking forward, not backward. And again, I underscore that he created that whole mentality. She said, I'm not going to sit here with the benefit of hindsight and judge the very good people who made the hard decisions, who were running the agency in very extraordinary circumstances at the time. The very important thing to know about CIA is that we follow the law. We followed the law then and we follow the law now. And so this doesn't really go anywhere. She will be able to kind of punt most of the difficult questions and to get away with the equivocation of saying torture doesn't work, but I won't criticize what we did. And the relativism that she offered was in full view when she talked about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind of 9/11. And she basically said that he doesn't recognize any laws or any moral values. He's the one who executed Daniel Pearl on video. And as a result, he has no rights. And we can do whatever we want to these, she didn't say animals, but that is the clear inference. And I learned last night that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed has sent a smoke signal from Guantanamo. saying that he's written a list of questions that he'd like a senator to ask Gina Haspel. And I'd like to see that. And here's another victim of CIA torture, who I had not heard of before, Fatima Budjar. Now, she was one of the few women taken into custody by the CIA, sent to a black site in Thailand that she thinks is the same one that Gina Haspel ran. And in March of 2004, she was pregnant. And she had been renditioned first to Libya and then to the black site in Thailand. And this is painful to read her testimony. Quote, "I'll never forget the sight of my kidnappers, dressed all in black, wearing ski masks, waiting for me in a white cell in the Bangkok detention site. My husband and I had fled Colonel Gaddafi's regime, moving from country to country to stay away from his killers. We were on our way to Europe when we were seized in Malaysia, sent to Bangkok, where the Thais handed us to our kidnappers. People I now know from documents found in Libya were with the CIA. A man grabbed my head and shoved me into a truck. I don't understand why I was taken. I assume the CIA went after my husband because he led an Islamist group that openly opposed the Gaddafi dictatorship. But what did that have to do with me? I'm from a small town in Morocco. I wasn't a political dissident. I'd never been to Libya until the CIA flew me there. I never meant the United States any harm. I have no idea how long I was in the Thai secret prison. I was terrified. They chained me to the hooks on the wall. Some of what they did to me in that prison was so awful I can't talk about it. They hit me in the abdomen, just where the baby was. To move me, they bound me to a stretcher from head to toe like a mummy. I was sure I would shortly be killed. For the rendition flight to Libya, I was taped to a stretcher again. The tape caught the corner of my eye, and it stayed that way, my eye taped open, tears streaming down my face for more than 14 hours. This is barbaric. To do it to a pregnant woman who is not a terrorism suspect, there is no rationalization, there is no human explanation for this. Unfortunately, shortly before she delivered her 4-pound baby boy, they released her from prison, and she remained in Libya for another 6 years. Her husband was in prison there and brutally tortured as well. Now, I think that Gina Haspel should face this woman, Fatima Budjar. But I'll bet none of these senators will bring her in as a witness or even facilitate the presentation of her questions directly to Gina Haspel. And a strong opinion piece about this from a man I deeply respect, veteran journalist Robert Scheer. Writing at Truthdig, he said that Trump, in appointing Gina Haspel, made a move clearly designed to prove that a woman can be as crudely barbaric as this deeply misogynistic president. When it comes to bullying, Haspel, whose confirmation begins today, is the real deal, and the Donald is a pussycat by comparison. Haspel is Trump's ideal feminist, a point tweeted by White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders last week, when she said there's no one more qualified to be the first woman to lead the CIA, and any Democrat who claims to support women's empowerment and national security but opposes her nomination is a total hypocrite. Sure, there couldn't be any other issue. And Scheer goes on, for a decade after the 9/11 attacks, Haspel served as chief of staff, running the vast network of secret rendition torture prisons around the globe. The Senate Intelligence Report established torture is not legal. Haspel deliberately destroyed 92 videotapes. You know about that. Then he goes on to say, the best witness to the crimes of Bloody Gina is offered by a true hero of the real war against terrorism, former FBI agent Ali Soufan, who's credited with having done the most significant interrogation of captured terrorist suspects without torture. Quote, "It is a matter of public record," Soufan wrote, "that Gina Haspel played a key role in the agency's now-defunct program of enhanced interrogation techniques. I know firsthand how brutal those techniques were and how counterproductive. Unsurprisingly, the CIA's own Inspector General concluded that the torture program failed to produce any significant, actionable intelligence, and I testified to the same effect under oath in the Senate." And here's where Scheer ventures into some of the comments I've been making. But even some Democrats may support Haspel's nomination, given that members of their party have been complicit in excusing the heinous practice of torture. After all, it was President Obama who decided not to prosecute anyone for ordering or committing the torture that is one of the great stains on American history. In fact, Obama prosecuted former CIA agent John Kiriakou after he revealed the torture program's existence. Whether or not the Senate confirms Haspel, Scheer concludes, the very fact of her nomination defines Trump as a fatally callous leader, totally contemptuous of basic human rights and the rule of law. As I watched the hearing this morning, there was an interruption. A voice from the gallery politely interrupted by saying, "Excuse me," but I don't think she answered Senator Wyden's question. It was the voice of Ray McGovern. And you know the irony that Ray served 27 years at the agency. He was Reagan's daily briefer. And he became a whistleblower and critic back in 2003 with the phony intelligence that led us into Iraq. And Ray, you spoke up for me, you stood up for me in that hearing today, and I hope they didn't rip your suit or injure you as those 5 Capitol Police ejected you from the chamber. And thanks for being so polite. He started by saying, "Sorry to interrupt here." Meanwhile, there has been an explosive development in the Trump-Russia case related to attorney Michael Cohen. Before we dive into that, I want to take a moment here to thank the people who support my work at the Peter B. Collins podcast with your subscriptions. People like Joe Clarici, a staunch supporter, Jens Ivan Nielsen from the island of Bornholm in Denmark, Alex Croakey, who reported a little glitch with our iTunes feed yesterday. We think we got that fixed, and Alex decided to drop $50 into the till while he was here. Thanks, Alex. That's a nice surprise. And let's also thank Anna Gordonier, a staunch monthly supporter. I'd like you to join them. All you have to do is visit peterbcollins.com. Find the menu button, then click on Become a Subscriber. You'll land on the sign-up page, and in just a couple of minutes, you can set up a PayPal payment scheme for $5, $10, $20 a month, a $50 annual subscription. And if you're allergic to PayPal, you can communicate with me by the U.S. mail at P.O. Box 150, 660, San Rafael, California, zip 94915. That's Box 150, 660, San Rafael, 94915. Now, as you know, I've taken a skeptical posture to the media malpractice of the Trump-Russia narrative. And we still don't have any evidence of the foundational claims that Russia hacked the DNC, gave that to WikiLeaks to weaponize against Hillary Clinton. But the Mueller investigation has gone, far afield from that. And some people criticize him for expanding his scope. But however we got here, the Stormy Daniels case, the hush money payment from Michael Cohen and his secret LLC, well, this has surfaced in a new way with a new leak. And we don't know where the attorney for Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti, got this information from suspicious activity reports. When you go into your bank and you try to deposit a check for $12,000 and they give you the third degree, or you go in with cash, $5,000, $6,000 to put in your own damn account, and they treat you like a money laundering drug dealer? Well, those activities produce an SAR, a suspicious activity report. And now we know, or at least we're told, and media outlets have confirmed much of this information from Michael Avenatti, that Michael Cohen received a $500,000 payment from the Columbus Nova Company, which is linked to the Renova Group, which is founded by Russian billionaire Viktor Vekselberg. And that's not all. There were payments in this same account that was set up initially to pay off Stormy Daniels through this secret process with phony names. But shortly thereafter, Cohen was depositing checks from the international drug pharma company Novartis, from AT&T, from this Russian-linked company. It's American-owned, but it has ties to a Russian oligarch, $500,000. And some of those payments were made at just under $100,000. I don't know if they thought that that would skirt the attention of the regulators, or maybe it was just a $20 wire transfer fee that reduced the $100,000 to $99,980. In any event, this could be the evidence that links Russian collusion to the Trump campaign. So far, we've seen a lot of innuendo, we've seen circumstantial evidence, we've seen this bizarre effort to indict Russians knowing that that's just for show. And Mueller's busy defending that right now. A federal judge is ready to throw some of those charges out. But this could be material evidence. And as I've said from the start, I will follow the evidence. And if it persuades me, I may someday conclude that the Russian collusion arguments were legit. But of course, this evidence wasn't available to the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, and other media organizations that have promoted the Trump-Russia narrative, again, based on flimsy public evidence and anonymous leaks. And what shapes up here is a form of pay-to-play. Now, I have raised questions about the Clintons and how the Clinton Foundation had Huma Abedin on the payroll at a time when she would be able to contact people in the State Department to arrange meetings for people who had generously donated to the Clinton Foundation, and that happened more than once. Well, Trump appears to have picked up that playbook because after Novartis started paying Michael Cohen, and they paid him over $1 million, Trump went to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and he dined with the incoming CEO of Novartis. This is circumstantial evidence. I can't prove that Trump colluded with the Novartis guy and that Cohen engineered all that. It might have just happened. But Michael Avenatti is having a field day here. He said, watching all the companies that sent money to the LLC slush fund come up with different alleged reasons for hiring Cohen, accounting advice, real estate consulting, insight. Who knew Cohen was such a brilliant Renaissance man? And as a result of the murky origins of Michael Avenatti's information, the Treasury Department's Inspector General is investigating whether confidential banking information has been leaked. And it appears that it has. I don't know how Avenatti got it. But here's another happy soundbite from Michael Avenatti to Anderson Cooper on CNN last night. There's been some criticism of our media strategy and how often I'm on CNN and how often I've been on your show and other networks. It's working. It's working in spades because we're so out front on this. People send us information. People want to help our cause. People contact us with information. So he appears to be alluding to the source of his information. And as he gloats and pats himself on the back for great media strategy, well, Rudy Giuliani says the same thing, that his strategy is working because he's diverted everybody's attention from, the Iran deal, all kinds of other shenanigans that are going on, the Scott Pruitt investigation. Pruitt hasn't been fired. And the Washington Post also reports that Robert Mueller began looking at the Novartis payment to Michael Cohen way back last November. So that's well before the raid on his offices and residences. And it shows that the Mueller investigation is going pretty deep. And get this, Novartis wrote a contract for $1.2 million. The agreement was for $100,000 a month. The first meeting with Cohen occurred in March of last year, 2017. And according to those folks, they determined that Michael Cohen and his company Essential Consultants would be unable to provide the services that Novartis had anticipated. and they hadn't negotiated an escape clause from the contract. So they stopped meeting with him, but kept sending checks for, wires, I guess, for $100,000 a month. And AT&T says, hey, we didn't hire Mike Cohen to lobby or to fix anything. We just wanted his input. And of course, AT&T has this mega merger underway that requires federal approval with Time Warner or the remnants of Time Warner. And that is probably the motivation for greasing the president's fixer. And once again, we have this image of all the people surrounding Trump. Mike Flynn, $500,000 consulting deal with a guy on behalf of the nation of Turkey. Jared Kushner, using his position at the White House to renegotiate the family debt. Paul Manafort, scheming and working for Trump for free as campaign manager so that he can build up political juice to help pay off his $8 million debt to Deripaska, the Russian oligarch. And enter the picture Victor Vekselberg, the guy who is tied to this payment. He strenuously says he didn't do anything to pay Michael Cohen, that this all came from the American affiliate that is owned by his cousin, the cousin who took him to the inauguration after dropping $250,000 on the Trump committee. Vekselberg forged a metals empire back in the Boris Yeltsin period when there was chaos in Russia, and these people were clever enough to grab state industries. His longtime business partner is Len Blavatnik, a naturalized dual U.S.-UK citizen who owns the Warner Music Group now. And they are tied to Oleg Deripaska. But I credit Vice News. I linked to their backgrounder on this Russian oligarch, and they do a fairly balanced job because late in the article they quote a woman from the Center for Strategic and International Studies whose name is Olga Alikar. And she says, look, it's hard to stay extremely wealthy in Russia without some dealings with the Kremlin. But I am leery of arguments that suggest that nothing happens in Russia without Putin's puppet mastery. Lots of things happen in Russia that Putin has nothing to do with. And that's a really important point because so much of the language is imprecise. And we hear about ties to Russia, links to Russia. And as I've pointed out, there are 150 million people in Russia. They're not all Putin. But in the American media, you could never really figure that out. Now to the day two coverage of Trump's biggest blunder so far. Violating the Iranian agreement by announcing that the United States would be imposing sanctions on Iran, which has been compliant with the agreement. And while the media goes into overdrive, trying to present some balance, but also expressing the horror that so many smart people feel at this ridiculous move that is only going to benefit the state of Israel. No one else. Our European allies are separated from us on this. In fact, the entire thinking world looks at this and says, gosh, Trump is trying to start a war. And at the New Yorker, Robin Wright writes, in a rebuke to Trump, the leaders of Britain, France, and Germany expressed regret over Trump's decision. They've vowed to remain in the pact, which also includes Russia and China. China has said it will adhere to the accord. And Iran. This could be spin because there are two messages that surfaced yesterday. One is get ready to restart the centrifuges, and the other is maybe we will stay in the deal. A quote from Hassan Rouhani, the president of Iran, if at the end of a short period of time we come to the conclusion that with the collaboration of 5 countries it is feasible to attain what the Iranian people wish, despite the views of the U.S. and the Zionist regime, and also the impolite remarks by Trump, we should see whether it is possible to just keep with the JCPOA and also take steps in line with regional peace and tranquility. So, Trump may have isolated the United States in a way that we don't recover from. And if the talks with North Korea fail, he will have really left the world in a much riskier position with two nations that are widely believed to have these nuclear aspirations. While it's pretty clear that North Korea has had that, that's not so clear when you look at Iran. And we've discussed that many times here on this program. A good opinion piece in the New York Times today under the byline of Motoko Rich. By withdrawing from the Iran deal, analysts say Trump has proved the United States to be an untrustworthy negotiating partner that cannot be counted on to honor any agreement. And Professor Robert Kelly at a university in South Korea says only a fool would trust the U.S. to keep its word in a rogue state nuke deal now. And so far, Kim Jong-un has not expressed any misgivings. And in fact, today, he released to Secretary of State Pompeo 3 American citizens of Korean descent who had been imprisoned in the North. Nothing else was exchanged except plans to meet, and they won't be at the 38th parallel. It appears that the meeting will be held in Singapore. So that's progress, and Trump can crow about it and tweet about it. But there's a lot more to be done, and it's clear that the timeline that Trump has in mind for Korean disarmament is very different from the one that Kim Jong-un has. I want to read a couple of quotes here, and I'll just let you know that the person I'm quoting here was central to the neocon movement during the Bush era. He was a signer of the ridiculous blueprint called the Plan for a New American Century, and I will name him after I read a couple of quotes regarding Trump. The writer says, he's been acting like an arsonist toward America's international obligations. He exited the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Paris Climate Accord, and now the Iran nuclear deal. He's launching new renegotiations of NAFTA and the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement and bad-mouthing NATO and the World Trade Organization. While denigrating existing accords, he has vowed to negotiate the new ones that will be simply stupendous. In saying sayonara to the TPP, he said, I like bilateral. I think it's better for our country, and I would much prefer a bilateral deal. This writer continues, all this is in keeping with Trump's boast that he is the world's greatest deal maker. So how is the deal maker in chief doing in striking beautiful new bargains? Not so well. After nearly 16 months in office, he has successfully renegotiated exactly one deal with South Korea. And trade experts describe the differences between the old agreement and the new one as minimal. That is Max Boot, a guy who I derided all through the Bush years as a numbnud neocon who supported regime change in Iraq and well beyond. And he's one of the few neocons who has expressed his regret for those positions. And finally today, Trump has decided, after consulting with Fox and Friends, that 91% of the network news about him is negative. And of course, that doesn't have anything to do with Cohen, Stormy, Rudy, Pruitt, you name it. No, there is a study that came out by the Media Research Center saying that 91% of the nightly newscasts on ABC, CBS, and NBC between January and April contain negative coverage of the president. So, his muse about this is the fake news is working overtime. Just reported that despite the tremendous success we're having with the economy and all things else, 91% of the network news about me is negative. Fake. Why do we work so hard in working with the media when it is corrupt? Take away credentials? So that's the veiled threat of Trump. And so it goes. Thanks for listening to my daily news and comment podcast. I'll be returning on May 16th. I'm Peter B. Collins.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.